What happens if the US walks away from NATO? No more American troops, no more US funding, Europe left to fend for itself. How dangerous would that be for our world? This isn't just a hypothetical scenario. US President Donald Trump has repeatedly threatened to pull out of NATO, calling it a bad deal for America. And if he follows through this time, the biggest winner might not be the US, it could be Russia and even China. And it could upend the entire world order. Without America, does NATO survive? Or does the world become a far more dangerous place? Let us break it down. How much does NATO really depend on the US? And what happens if the alliance is left to stand on its own? Stick around, because the consequences might surprise you. Do you think Europe and NATO can survive without the US? Drop your thoughts in the comments before we dive deeper. First question: why is the US so important to NATO? NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, was created in 1949 to counter Soviet expansion. Today, it has 32 member nations. But let us be honest, one country plays a bigger role than the rest. That's right, the United States. NATO doesn't have its own army. It relies on its members to step up when needed. And when things get serious, the world doesn't call Germany or France for help, it calls the US. One of the US's biggest complaints with NATO: money. Trump has argued that the US pays too much while Europe pays too little. And guess what? He's not entirely wrong. Here is the breakdown. The US covers 15.88% of NATO's direct budget. But more importantly, in 2024, the US has spent $430 billion on NATO-related military expenses. Meanwhile, Europe and Canada combined spent $755 billion. That's a huge difference. Now, if the US leaves NATO, who picks up the tab? More important, who picks up the weapons? The biggest consequence of the US leaving NATO isn't what you think. Stay with me. If NATO loses its strongest player, the impact is massive. Here is what happens next. Smaller NATO countries, especially those bordering Russia, lose their biggest shield. Suddenly, Ukraine, the Baltics, and Eastern Europe are way more vulnerable. Right now, many European countries depend on the US military for protection. If America pulls out, they'll have to massively increase their own defense spending, potentially triggering an arms race. Without NATO, America's political and military influence weakens, while countries like Russia and China step in to fill the gap. Terrorism, cyber threats, military conflicts. NATO coordinates global responses to all of these. Without the US, international defense strategies could all fall apart. For decades, NATO has kept Russia's ambitions in check. Without the US, does that balance shift? Oh yes, more than you think. The question here is, can the US actually leave NATO? Legally, yes. Under Article 13 of the NATO Treaty, any country can leave. Politically, it is a mess. A US exit from NATO would destabilize Europe, shift global power towards Russia and China, reduce American influence in Africa and the Middle East, and weaken the US position at the United Nations. A US exit from NATO wouldn't just shift budgets and impact Europe, it could shift the entire balance of global power. The impact would be felt beyond the borders of the US, Europe, and Canada. It would even have implications for countries that have a neutral stand on the issue. For example, India. A weakened NATO could push Russia closer to China, and that has direct implications for India's borders and alliances. So will the US leave NATO? That depends. With Donald Trump back in office, this debate is back front and center. The real question is, would leaving NATO actually benefit the US? Or would it be a massive strategic mistake? So is this the end of NATO? The truth is, this debate isn't new. Every US administration since George W. Bush has pushed Europe to take more responsibility for its own defense. But without the US, NATO might not survive as we know it. And that means we might find ourselves in a very different world. So what do you think? Should America really step back now? And can Europe or the rest of the world handle what comes next? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into global affairs. Enjoyed this visual deep dive? There is plenty more. Explore our infographic videos playlist, packed with the stories on culture, power, and the world around you. For the link, check out the description and comment section of this video.